week 13 it was an all right episode. We are still in the self-contained episodes of the show. And as far as those types of episodes go, this was one of the better ones, I guess. Um, the main crux of the storyline actually focuses on Jock. So I don't have any pictures for him, but these two, JR and Bobby, they get in this plane crash and they can't find the plane. So Miss Ellie is really nervous because Jock isn't doing well health-wise, and he had that surgery a couple of weeks back. So she doesn't want to tell him about this. And this is the major cause of the tension for this episode, because everyone has to kind of, they need to be careful with what they say around Jock. And some of them are, and some of them aren't. That's basically what this episode is. The things that I really liked about this episode, Miss Ellie has this deep strength to her that's very compelling to watch. And it's really incredible seeing something like that. The mother figure emotionally is as strong, if not stronger, than Jock is. And she can put people into their places. She definitely put the reporter into his place during this week's episode. So yeah, I mean, there was even a reference. It was interesting. There was a reference to a previous episode this season in this episode, and that's been fairly rare so far. It's not, well, forget that. There's not too much that I can discuss about this episode. Pam and Bobby have this fight, and Pam is really struggling with wanting to protect her husband from the hard nature of his father, her father-in-law. And so she slips things out. Now, so far, Pam's gotten into major trouble with things that she's let slip out. This happened just last week, for instance. So Pam needs to learn to shut her trap, because otherwise she's going to get into so much trouble. So if she just lets it go, lets him think whatever he wants to think, she's not going to get into this trouble. Anyways, Jock finds out. He sends Ray off to find them, and he finds them, and everyone's good and safe. But another interesting thing about this episode is Sue Ellen's reaction. She is nervous that because she doesn't have a child, a Ewing heir, that if JR, in particular, is dead, she's going to get kicked off of South Fork Ranch. And she will have nothing. Pam has her job. She's able to support herself if she gets kicked off of the ranch. But Sue Ellen doesn't have anything. And it was interesting watching her, the way she deals with that is just to run to alcohol. Which, in some ways, was one of the most interesting things overall about the episode. I actually think the best scene of the episode is when Miss Ellie tells off the reporter, because we see a strength in Miss Ellie that we haven't seen before. But Sue Ellen becomes a more and more intriguing, multi-dimensional character this season. What Linda Gray has said before is absolutely right. Whoever married JR must have been nuts. And Sue Ellen is nuts. And she isn't, at least at the moment, she's not really fending for herself either. She just kind of takes the blows as they come. Is that entertaining to watch? Not really. They they have this weird kinetic energy whenever they're on screen together, but they really weren't on screen together very much at all this episode, and they're not really trying to explore their relationship that much. Um, but Sue Ellen goes over to Cliff and says, "Can you help me just adopt the baby anyways, and just to spite JR?" And he says, "I would love to do anything I can to just spite him and get back at him, but there's no way you can go about that." The development of the Cliff and Sue Ellen relationship has been interesting over the past couple of weeks, and you get this sense, even in this episode, that it's going to go somewhere. They're going to do something with this. So there's some interesting setup that's going on with this episode. Even though it's pretty self-contained, the major arc of the storyline finishes and everyone's pretty much happy at the end of the episode. It's not the full-on nighttime soap opera yet. It will become that, but it's not there yet. They're still trying to figure out these characters and to build up an audience. And this, I think, this particular episode, up until that point in time, was the highest rated episode that Dallas had ever done. So, at least in terms of season 1. So, it's developing an audience in terms of the history of the show up until this point in time. Am I glad that I've stuck with it? Of course. I love Dallas. I think Dallas is an extraordinary program, endlessly fascinating. But it has been difficult, these earlier episodes. This was one of the ones I enjoyed a little bit more. Am I looking forward to next week's episode? Yeah, I'm not sure which episode that is, and I'm also not unsure of when the shift occurs to make it the full-on nighttime soap where there's a cliffhanger at the end of every episode. Because I'm itching for that. I want to have a reason to return. Right now, it's just stubbornness. And being committed to this analysis, this study. Because there's not too much to really want me to yearn to get back to South Fork. But hopefully you'll stick with me over these multiple years that this study will go on, and we'll see how the show changes, how I change, how I analyze, all of these different things. So I hope you will stick with me and return next week when we go back to South Fork.